Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of the Shaded Youth. I know we had a little hiatus there for a couple weeks because of Ramadan and Eid, but we're back with another amazing episode. And this one's a bit special because we are discussing what's going on right now in the state of Palestine. We have on the one and only Hebh Jamal, a local of New York. She is an activist who has been speaking about these kinds of issues for a few years now. So yeah, let's just get right into the episode. Assalamu alaikum, Heb. How are you?
Alaikum assalam. So my name is actually Hiba.
Heba, sorry.
My parents misspelled my name at birth, so they added an extra H, but it's Hiba. No worries. I'm good, alhamdulillah.
Okay, gotcha. So just for the audience who may not know who you are and the kind of work that you do, could you just give like a brief summary of that and why it's important to you?
Sure. So, I mean, I have been involved in Palestine advocacy for many years now. So I recently graduated City College of New York. I was the president of the Students for Justice in Palestine. However, has been on social media, has been kind of interacting with youth on various levels. Currently, although I was hesitant to it at first, a lot of my advocacy is on, TikTok, for example. I do educational videos. I speak to students, wherever I can. And yeah, activism isn't necessarily like one set project. I do volunteer with a group called Researching the American Israeli Alliance, which is, by the way, it's an amazing resource. Everyone should check them out. They research how police violence like in America correctly correlates to the occupation of Palestinians. So they do amazing solidarity work. So I help volunteer for them at the moment. So yeah.
That's amazing, mashallah. So I guess just to take it back a bit and kind of start from the ground up of exactly why is the situation in Palestine right now, why is it so, I guess to a lot of us it may seem unique, um, and exactly why is it important for us as in the 21st century to not lose grasp of what that issue actually is.
Sure. So, for a lot of people, they may believe that this all started with the evictions of the 28 families in Sheikh Jarrah, where the Israeli courts essentially stated that Israeli settlers had more rights to their home and they needed to be, basically kicked out. Um, and the interesting thing is, though, is that this situation is not unique to Sheikh Jarrah. I mean, it's been happening for decades. It's been an Israeli policy since 1948 to kick Palestinians out of their homes, ethnically cleanse them, and displace them and make them refugees. The difference, however, is that all of this happened during Ramadan, right before Eid, during the holy nights, and the residents of Sheikh Jarrah in particular, where their village is located in East Jerusalem. So of course, anyone knows the Muslims, particularly, know the significance of AlAqsa. And Israel's policy is to basically Judaize Jerusalem, to make it that all of Jerusalem is the capital of Israel, not just West Jerusalem. So this is more of an effort to ethnically cleanse and dispossess Palestinians from their homes and replace them with Israeli settlers. And I think one of the insane videos of a man from Brooklyn essentially saying that if I'm not going to steal it, someone else is going to steal it, to a Palestinian woman. I think that in itself like sparked complete outrage across Palestinians in the diaspora worldwide and within Palestine. They understood that Israel is not going to stop taking Palestinian lands, even in one of the most holiest places for Palestinians and for Muslims. So that's initially what started it, but it didn't just start with Sheikh Jarrah. This has been going on. Tensions has been building up for a while. A week before the Sheikh Jarrah kind of erupted, there was basically a rally, a death to Arab rally within Jerusalem. So right wing extremism, but just Israeli society as a whole is becoming much bolder in their anti-Arab hatred, anti-Palestinian hatred, and Palestinians realize that if they don't have an organized, resistance, then all of Palestine would be gone. So, yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah, and I think a lot of us, especially we're seeing a lot of videos taken like on the ground on social media, and that one famous clip of like when I think like a part of AlAqsa or like a tree or something that set on fire, and then right outside there was like a bunch of Israeli, it was like an Israeli crowd just like having like a festival, like dancing up and down, um, and yeah, so I think that kind of gives credence to like what you were saying about how they just want to take back, you know, make Judaize it, right? Um, would you say that um, them trying to take hold of that area, um, or let me go back a bit. So Al-Aqsa, as we know, it is like, the third holiest masjid in Islam, right? Would you say that they're essentially trying to take control of that and completely wipe out the Muslim presence in East Jerusalem?
So, although this is, although again, this is a Muslim issue, like,
Right.
Islamophobia is a crucial part of the Zionist project, of the Zionist war machine, especially as they paint all Palestinians as terrorists and associated with jihad in Islam. But this is a uniquely Palestinian issue. They don't care of the religion of Palestinians.
Hmm.
They associate Palestinians with violent, barbaric Arabs that, need to be contained, right? And so this is not, you know it is partly a religious issue, but it is mostly an issue about, in Arabic it's like the Palestinian qadiyya, the Palestinian struggle, right? And yeah, so Israel is continuously trying to push more Palestinians out of East Jerusalem, because that is one of the most crucial points for Israel, is to make Jerusalem a capital, uh, is to make Jerusalem the capital of Israel, all of it, right, west and east. And due to international law, actually, Israel has no jurisdiction over East Jerusalem, but of course that doesn't stop them. So yeah, so it has been Israeli policy from the very, very beginning to displace Palestinians, and to continuously push them out and to make them refugees, even within their homes.
Okay. Okay. Gotcha. I just wanted to kind of clarify that point. So, I know a lot of Muslims, especially, right? We kind of go gung ho for Palestine, right? It's more of like a symbol for us in a lot of ways. But, to your point, it is like a uniquely Palestinian issue. Um, how do you feel about many Muslims um, taking a more of a religiously oriented kind of standpoint to the conflict, such as not really rallying for political action, really just saying, focus on your sins, make a lot of dua, right? I think we've heard a lot of this stuff, don't go to protests, things like that. What would you say to that?
I think that these people are starting to become the more fringe part of our community. I think, um, of course, I think it's absolutely ridiculous. I think that politics and like political action and advocacy and, like the aspect of jihad has been a crucial part of, Islamic, the Muslim tradition, the prophetic tradition as well. So when people are like, oh yeah, let's just make dua, let's just pray for Palestine. Dua is one of the most important things. I'm not trying to undermine prayer, but at the same time, uh, you know, Muslims within Palestinians in Gaza are the most spiritual and the most hopeful people on this planet. And they couldn't have done that without their deen, but they also resist. And they also are one of the fiercest people, like one of the fiercest Muslims as well. So I reject that. I think people who have that mentality don't have much to lose, and I think people who have that mentality are also very privileged and appreciate the status quo and don't really understand and grasp the aspect of the oppression around them. I do wanted to add, though, before you said this is a uniquely Palestinian issue. Um, Palestinians, though, understand that like this is about them, but it's also not just about them. So Palestinian, like when we talk about solidarity with the Palestinian cause, there are so much interconnections between the Palestinian struggle with the Black Lives Matter struggle, with tackling police brutality and police violence. And Palestinians understand that. They understand that there's a military industrial complex that America and Israel contribute to not only kill Black people here in the United States, but also kill Palestinians, Palestinians in Palestine. So I just want to clarify that there's a lot more connections than we think to other struggles. But yeah, I hope
Okay.
that answers.
Yeah, definitely. So just a follow up on what you just said. Um, so because a lot of people have become more and more supportive of Palestine now, it does kind of become obvious now who is becoming silent on the issue, right? Especially on social media. Um, and there are people here and there saying like uh where are the people that were all about Black Lives Matter, but now they're silent on Palestine, right? They were saying something about this movement, but now they're like silent about this. Um, and I do think if there is some belittling of the other movement there, saying that that movement didn't really have enough credibility as Palestine. But yeah, so what are your thoughts on that?
I hate when people do that. I mean, black black activists within the United States have shown countless times that they're in solidarity with Palestinians. Black advocates, just literally yesterday, Angela Davis did a 3-minute video showing solidarity for Palestinians. The people that say that aren't really advocates. They're social media trolls who kind of just go off of what they see and not understand how deeply rooted Black solidarity is with the Palestinian cause. So no, I don't like that as well, because it's also implying that people are so pro and people are so pro like uh actual justice for Black people here in the United States, or advocating for police abolition and to police violence and state sanctioned violence. And that's just not true, right? It's a really hard and gruesome struggle as well, and it shouldn't be belittled and it shouldn't be compared to either. And also, like, stop using the hashtag PLM. I mean, it's ridiculous. We have Palestinians have had their own slogans and chants and wording of their struggle since 1948. So I think that I think it's I don't know, people are a little bit annoying about that, but yeah.
Gotcha. Yeah, definitely. So one thing that I think has been kind of said about the Israeli Palestine issue for a while now is that it's kind of like the litmus test of whether a person is like truly about justice or not. Because I think it's just because of how controversial it is, especially in America, where Israel has lobbied so much for political power. Um, can it truly be said that it is a litmus test for social justice and vying for justice in the world?
I definitely think, advocacy for Palestine is a litmus test. I mean, we see countless times again of sellouts, not only within our community, but within the quote unquote advocacy community as a whole, of doing things and supporting people and politicians who completely undermine the Palestinian cause. I mean, we saw it with the mayoral candidate Eric Adams, who was not only a former police officer but was adamantly pro-Israel, completely uh, disregarding violence towards Palestinians. So yeah, and I'm glad that the Muslim leadership in New York City rescinded their endorsement. But honestly, I think the endorsement itself, shouldn't have happened, right? I was very frustrated about that, and you know, alhamdulillah, they rescinded it again. Like, that's what's important. But um, I do think that it is definitely a litmus test. For everyone. And when we have organizations, for example, like Engage, which is, a Muslim political organizing group who has not stood up for Palestine in strong ways, who has, cooperated and worked with Zionists and Zionist organizations. Um, you know, it's disheartening, but it's also, we have to know about these things and have to say, like, this is, we like totally and completely uh like, not acceptable. It should be called out however many times we can.
Do you think we can afford to compromise on the issue of Palestine and Israeli control? maybe to attain some leverage in our own communities, like whether it be like
No,
political power
no.
or okay,
No.
gotcha.
I I think anyone, especially Muslims who believe that, are so comfortable with the status quo and are just so detached from how their actions impacts others. I think that regardless of intentions, and I think like intentions are always good, right? Like intentions is like, oh, we want an extra day for Eid for our community. We want to be able to park outside our masajid, and we can't do that without political power. Um, and my response would be like, is political power that much important? It's to be complicit in the occupation of Palestinians when you support politicians that uplift that and support that, and especially for a mayoral candidate who, in New York City, like that has many Zionists and many Zionist organizations here. So I think that that's a pretty bad take, and I think that people need to push back if any leader believes that, really, because I think one of the most important things is not only the of safety and protection of the Palestinians, but also ourselves. Like when we cooperate with these people, we cooperate with the police, they're not really our friends. Like the war on terror in the United States is still ongoing, and people don't realize that.
Definitely. Um, so some things, obviously that we can do is, protest, petition, make dua, whatever, right? There's a bunch of action items that people throw around. Um, and protests seemingly have become more popular in the last week or so. For those of us who may not have ever been to a protest or who may not exactly see the direct benefits of doing it, um, are they effective? What exactly are we trying to do from going to a protest?
I think protests are very important. I definitely think so. Just the other day, when there was a huge protest in Brooklyn, and organized by Palestinians and by Palestinian supporters, uh, Bella Hadid showed up, right? And I'm not about to like fawn over any sort of actor or model, but Israel themselves commented on that protest. Why would they comment on a protest and about the participants of the protest if it doesn't really make a difference? It's not much of people don't know really what to say to that. Actual, like a physical showing of support and solidarity, you don't know whose mind you're going to change. You don't know exactly who is watching you. And believe me, people were watching. The city was watching. The mayoral candidates were watching, and the world also was watching. Like people in Palestine, they see these protests and they get more uplifted. And I think that in itself, if we could show solidarity on the streets for our Palestinian brothers and sisters to make them resist the occupation even more fiercely, I think that's enough on its own. So I mean, also just historically, protests have always been a method of resistance. In Palestine, it's a method of resistance. Except in Palestine, they not only get arrested for it, but they could get killed for it. So never undermine the power of actually coming together and showing support. Um, for your community. Like I think it's an extremely important activism tool.
Is it important to have these sort of influencers as allies, like you just said, Bella Hadid?
I think we survive without them. I don't think it's something we need per se.
Hmm.
I think it is telling though that how many kind of famous people are showing support and solidarity. And I think that's only because of the groundwork of activists and the people of Palestine and how we have spread and educated as much people as we can. There are people that have never commented on a social justice issue in their lives talking about Palestine. That's not in vain. So I don't think it's like, oh, we need them. It's like it's a telling of how much we have accomplished in advocating for the Palestinian cause.
Gotcha. Um, and I think in recent years, one growing movement or thing like call to arms was the BDS movement, right? Boycott, divest, and sanction, I believe. Could you just run down through exactly what that is, and is it actually the most effective means of trying to get Palestinian liberation right now?
I think BDS is one of the most effective means. Yes, of course. So BDS, Boycott, Divestment, Sanctions, is a movement that was composed of Palestinian civil rights organizations, labor unions, workers, activists, and academics within Palestinian civil society, and they said that this is our call for the international community, right? And so when we talk about boycott, we boycott from Israeli companies and companies that contribute to the occupation of Palestinians, when they build security measures, when they, like when they further the gap of inequality and oppression, and continuously fund the apartheid. So that's what I mean by boycott. Divestment is divesting away from Israeli institutions, specifically also academic institutions. So when you have a college exchange program to Tel Aviv University, Tel Aviv University and a lot of Israeli universities specifically contribute to the occupation of Palestinians. They not only do they have like um, security programs that teaches every single IDF military personnel on how to further oppress Palestinians. But being a Palestinian and being involved in these universities is categorically, like categorically harder, right? Like we don't have as much academic opportunities, even Palestinians within Israel. So I I think the divestment in particular is a very, very important tactic. And finally, sanctions, which is the hardest part, is getting foreign governments to have sanctions on Israel, which is one of the only ways. If America has sanctions on Israel, it is one of the only ways that Palestine can be free. Um, and it's a fight, but it's a very, very important tool.
Gotcha. And I know we are a bit short on time, so I do just want to ask, just because it is important, I think, and I think it's very inspiring for people when they hear like personal narratives. And I know you are Palestinian yourself, so if you have any stories from your family or stories that you've seen, feel free to share if you're comfortable.
Yeah, I mean, my family in particular was
Mhm.
exiled from Palestine, from the village of Jimzu in Al-Lid region, in 1948 in Operation Danny, where they ethnically cleansed and totally destroyed every Palestinian home, business, um, and resource for the Palestinians. So also that uh, they have nothing to return to, right? So, and a lot of my family moved to parts of the West Bank, but also to Jordan, and are dispersed all over the world. Um, my husband's family, however, a majority of them are in Gaza. So that's something that is really hard and emotional and traumatic to think about, is the concept that, you know, the family that I never even got to visit yet is facing extreme bombardment by the Israeli government and facing airstrikes. I mean, just the other day, my husband's neighbor is like, which is like my husband's family's neighbors, uh, which is basically like door to door almost. Their house was bombed, and their daughter and their mother was killed. So this is a very personal thing for Palestinians. If we don't have people personally that are affected, we know people, and we resonate with those who know people, and even if we don't know people, it like that could have been us, right? If we could have been refugees within Gaza, because a lot of Palestinians were refugees and they went to Gaza. They're not even originally from there. That could have been my family, and if it was my family, how would I be here today? So that concept of survivor's guilt as well is driving a lot of Palestinians to talk about this, and it isn't easy. Like, I'm talking to you, and it's not something easy to talk about. Uh, and we don't know even the effects of all of this afterwards, right? How does this affect the Palestinian diaspora and community even after Palestine is free? We have absolutely no idea. So yeah, Sorry, I don't have any particular
Mhm.
stories. I don't think that it would be productive to this
Yeah,
conversation.
no
It
worries, no
just make
worries.
our viewers,
Mhm.
want to cry. But
No worries.
um,
Yeah, gotcha.
um,
Well, we do want to wrap up just because, I know you have to go somewhere. Do you have any last words or last call to arms or anything you want to, last
well,
message?
the only thing I would say is never feel like, never feel like you can't do something. I mean, even just talking about Palestine within your schools, within your colleges, within your academic institutions, they're just circles. I mean, it makes such a difference. And again, like, continue to uplift Palestinian voices and people that are talking about this. Like, a lot of social media sites are silencing silencing our platforms in ways we can educate people. So remember to do that as well.
Definitely. Well, Jazakallah khair, Hiba, for being on today's episode. Hiba, right? I got that
Yes,
right.
Hiba,
Okay, okay.
yes.
Amazing. Um, may Allah allow us to see a free Palestine one day and allow us to
I mean,
continuously advocate for Palestine, never lose sight of justice in this world, and allow us to see the fruits of our labor in the akhirah.
I
آمين
mean,
سبحانك اللهم بحمدك ونشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته
sorry.